Good morning and welcome to the regular Board of County Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 7th, and we do begin each of our meetings with an invocation. This morning we have Pastor Raymond Pettit from Outside the Gates Worship. We invite you to stand and join us.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Father God, as we come to this day, Father, we're so concerned about the things that are going on as a federal government shutdown, God, but your word says in Romans 13 to submit to the authority given to us by you. So I pray, God, that you would just help us to find out what's going on, Father, in our spirits, in our country, and in our people. Father, we just pray right now that you would just minister to these commissioners, give them the insight that's required so that they can complete the task that you set before them. And Father, I pray also for the men and women of El Paso County, God, that they can recognize that you put them in the place so that they can complete the work you started. Father, I thank you for the ability to be able to recognize the 250th Navy, 250th Marines in a couple weeks, 250th Chaplain Corps a couple months ago, the 250th Army. God, we recognized, God, that you put us in this place for such a time as this. Help us to be more like you. Help us to shine for your glory, honor, and sake. Let us do the bidding of the Father. In Christ's name, amen.
And Vice Chair Williams, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Item 3.
Item number 3 is staff emergency items, and I'm unaware of any staff emergency items today.
Item 4.
Item number 4 is changes, postponements, and notice of the next meeting. I'm unaware of any changes or postponements to today's agenda, and the next meeting will be Thursday, October 9th at 9 o'clock for land use.
Item 5.
Item number 5 is the consent calendar, including items 5A1 through 5A7.
Okay, is there anyone here today who would like to speak on an item on the consent calendar? Seeing no one in the room and no one online, I'll bring it up here for any comments or a motion.
I would move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. One more opportunity if there are any comments. Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Wysong.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Applegate.
Aye.
Vice Chair Williams.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. Item 6.
Item number 6 is a proclamation recognizing the 250th anniversary of the United States Navy. Bill Wysong, Commissioner, Board of County Commissioners.
Commissioner Wysong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a motion proclaiming the proclamation recognizing the 250th anniversary of the United States Navy. Whereas on October 13th, 1775, as tensions with Great Britain escalated, the Continental Congress passed a resolution to procure armed vessels to attack British commerce and protect American trade. And whereas in 1972, the Chief of Naval Operations authorized the official recognition of October 13th as the United States Navy's birthday to foster pride and professionalism within the service. And whereas Colorado, though landlocked, has a strong connection to the U.S. Navy, with 4 ships named the USS Colorado, including the current Virginia-class nuclear-powered fast attack submarine currently in service in a World War II-era battleship known for its role in the Pacific Theater. And whereas, beyond named vessels, Colorado hosts several Navy commands, including the Navy Information Operations Command at Buckley Space Force Base in Aurora, and previously, it served as a home to the Naval Convalescent Hospital during World War II. And whereas, from the early sailors who manned the rigging and set sails to modern-day high-tech sailors, to the frogmen who cleared the beaches in both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters, to the present-day special operators, SEAL teams, the U.S. Navy has been instrumental in maintaining our nation's military dominance, and whereas it is the purpose of the United States Navy to maintain sufficient strength on the sea and in the air to enable it, in conjunction with our other armed forces, to uphold our national policies, interests, and protect international commerce, support, and international obligations to guard our country and its overseas possessions and dependencies. And whereas, from its humble beginnings with just a handful of wooden sailing ships to today's global force, including nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and submarines, the United States Navy has played a vital role in safeguarding freedom, ensuring peace, and responding to crises around the world. Now, therefore, on the 250th anniversary of the United States Navy, the El Paso County Board of County Commissioners hereby proclaims October 13th as United States Navy's birthday and calls on the citizens of El Paso County to display the American flag at their homes and places of business, to honor the brave sailors, past and present, who have answered the call to serve at sea, defending our nation with strength, determination, and perseverance. Done this 7th day of October, 2025, at Colorado Springs, Colorado, by the Board of County Commissioners of El Paso County, Colorado, Gary Geithner, Chair, Holly Williams, Vice Chair, Corey Applegate, Member, Lauren Nelson, Member, Bill Wysong, Member. Attested to by Steve Schleicher.
Second.
Thank you. That has been moved and seconded, and we do have some guests who are going to speak this morning. And I think that we will begin with our own district attorney.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to come over here, and especially thanks to Commissioner Wysong for spearheading recognition of the United States Navy. I have to attribute it to my fellow sailor who probably was the brains behind putting this together. But one thing that I think is important to note is, especially as it relates to the creation of the Navy and why it was so instrumental in where we are today, is looking at the challenges that this nation faced in 250 years ago today, which was the year before we declared our independence and separated ourselves from the European powers. And there's a really good book about that story. It's written by Ian Toll, and it's called Six Frigates. And it's really goes into great detail about the creation of the United States Navy and the creation of the first 6 frigates that were commissioned to be built to fight the really awesomely impressive British Navy at the time, the most powerful Navy in the world at that particular time. So powerful that nations just gave up their naval powers because they couldn't compete there. And for a burgeoning nation to put together a Navy that was able to stand up to the British might on the seas and in fact defeat the British Navy is really something that's awesome. And I think it speaks to the character of this nation and really gave us foothold to be where we are today. And one story in particular from that book is when the USS Constitution, the oldest commissioned warship in the world still today and still in operation, had a chance to go up against a superior British vessel and actually defeated that British vessel and conquered it and really rung the bells of freedom, in my opinion, with that story. Again, is just a testament to the character of our American spirit. And, that spirit is what leads to, for me, where I am today, I think. And that is when I graduated high school, I joined the Navy straight away. and served for 8 years, the last 4 of which was served on the USS Carl Vinson, a nuclear aircraft carrier. And it really gave me the maturity and the vision and the perseverance to be able to go off to school after that, and then law school, and then to run for election as a district attorney in the most populous county in the state of Colorado and the best judicial district in the state of Colorado. And, it's that perseverance again, and that, I think, character that the Navy imbues in people that allows me to be where I am today. And the really fun thing about this job is that sometimes I feel like DAs and prosecutors and law enforcement are kind of like those 6 frigates, especially in the state of Colorado, where there's constantly legislation being passed that makes it very difficult to stand up against lawlessness in our community. And that's one of the reasons why I, with love, call the DA's office the USS Justice. It goes back to my naval history and just the important work that we're doing over there in the DA's office, and the important work that law enforcement generally is doing in this community to make sure that we still have a very strong public safety presence here in the 4th Judicial District, El Paso and Teller counties. So thank you so much, commissioners, for passing this resolution, for supporting the DA's office like you always do. We can't do the jobs that we do without the support that you all give us. So thank you all for that. And thank you again for recognizing the 250th anniversary of the United States Navy. I know this is an Air Force town, but the Navy did just beat Air Force again for the 2nd year in a row, and pretty convincingly, I would add. So thank you, commissioners.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. And then we also have Charles Graves from El Paso County Veteran Services.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Charles Graves, and I'm a retired Senior Chief Petty Officer and 25-year veteran of the United States Navy. Proud to have served my country in both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars as a Fleet Marine Force corpsman, standing side by side with the Marines. So service in the Navy runs deep in my family. I've got my father, who served as a radioman in the Brownwater Navy during the Vietnam War, and my grandfather, who joined the Navy right after the Pearl Harbor attack in 1941. And he stayed in the Navy and retired in 1962 as a Chief Petty Officer. So I stand here today not for my family or for myself, but to represent sailors across the county whose sacrifice and commitment we honor today with this recognition of the Navy's birthday. So, and I want to thank the Board of County Commissioners for honoring this milestone and for honoring the Navy's role in the heritage of our military. I also want to thank you in my role as the manager of Veteran Services Office, where our team of professionals help everyday veterans to get the services and benefits that they need, and work with the local nonprofit organizations to get the services and support that they need. And if it weren't for your commitment to fund and prioritize the veterans and the large group of veterans in this community, that would not be possible. So on their behalf and on our office's behalf, thank you very much. And with that, I wanted to recognize 2 individuals this morning. First, Commissioner Bill Wysong, who himself is a Navy veteran. Sir, thank you for your service, and thank you for continuing to serve this community. And from my office, we've got Corey Gill, who's a Veteran Service Officer, retired Navy Chief Petty Officer. Thank you for your service and for continuing to help our veterans. So thank you for honoring the Navy's birthday this morning. Semper Fortis.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on this item? I know there are other faces here from the county, but I didn't know if you wanted to speak.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Steve Schleicher, El Paso County Clerk and Recorder. And I know we have some Marines in here, and as our DA shared that the Naval Academy beat the Air Force Academy for 2 years in a row, but I think the reason they won this year is they ran the Marine option. But, believe it or not, as a former United States Marine myself, the Navy runs deep in my blood. And if I could, I just want to share something from my great-grandfather. Memories of Pearl Harbor die with mate Arthur Lee, who was my great-grandfather. Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, the living nightmare of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941, ended Saturday for Alfred Lee of 122 Park Avenue, Stroudsburg, when he died at the age of 66. The tall, husky, retired Chief Petty Officer was severely wounded during the tragic dawn attack, which sunk the USS Sacramento, on which he was a chief boatswain's mate. As a result of his wounds, Lee spent the major part of the last 17 years in Veterans Administration hospitals throughout the Eastern Seaboard. Lee, who was born in Anomaque, Pennsylvania, loved the sea and spent the major part of his life at sea, having joined the U.S. Navy May 23, 1919, while 16 years old. His family and the sea were the most important things in his life. His son Daniel, who is also in the Navy, said Sunday, "Throughout his entire 30-year naval career, Lee spent nearly about 4 years on land." The friendly and easygoing Lee never talked much about his experience in the Navy, Pearl Harbor especially. The bombs, cries of pain, destruction, and the death were branded on his mind by the metal plate which was placed in his skull due to the wounds he suffered. But the memories ended Saturday in the Veterans Hospital at Wilkes-Barre. Lee also never talked about the 7 days he spent clinging to a board, floating in the Pacific when another ship he was serving on sunk. He was among the 51 survivors of a crew of 300. When he received his training at the Newport, Rhode Island Naval Training Center in 1919, Lee first served on the USS President Grant. Since then, he had served on dozens of ships, many of which are now a part of history. Among these were the USS Asheville, USS Memphis, USS New Mexico, USS Arkansas, Fairfax, the Woodcock, Badger, and the J. Fred Talbot. In 1939, Lee retired from the Navy but was recalled to active duty 3 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. Raised on a farm in Anomaque, Pennsylvania, Lee traveled throughout the Pacific during his 3 decades of naval service. His all too few times on land he spent stationed in Guantanamo Bay from 1933 to 1936 in Havana, Cuba. In addition to various points in the Philippines in the late 1930s and early 1940s. He always said if he had to do it all over again, he would do the same thing. Being in the Navy was one of his proudest moments. So Daniel, his son, who is stationed at Lakehurst, New Jersey, unlike his father, Daniel said he spends most of his time on land, not sea. Lee was a member, of the George N. Kemp Post-American Legion Fraternal Order of Eagles in the U.S. Navy Fleet Reserve. Sorry there. A Presbyterian, Lee was also a member of numerous naval orders, which are commemorative for having crossed various points on the globe, such as the equator. Those of us that served in the Navy or Marines know there's a little ritual that goes on when you're aboard ship and you cross the equator. And I'll let somebody else talk about that little thing. So a son of the late Philip and Lee Lee, the seaman is survived by his wife, Mary Lee, my great-grandmother, his son, one stepson, Arthur Neville of Stroudsburg. But I just wanted to share with you is that my great-grandfather was a hero to me. He never talked about it, but we can joke about the Navy and the Marines, but I find it absolutely admirable that you all are celebrating the United States 250th because there's individuals like my great-grandfather who gave 30 years to the Navy, and basically his son, my grandfather, was not very happy when I went in the Marines. But anyway, so thank you for allowing me to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Madam Chair, thank you, fellow county commissioners. I owe a lot to the Navy. Being a son of a 22-year Chief Warrant Officer, 4th class Navy sailor, he met my mom in the Philippines, and that's where I was born. And so literally owe my life to the Navy. And so I also owe a lot of my upbringing to the Navy as well. And so being a son of that Chief Warrant Officer, a lot of life values taught to me as a child. And also growing up in the cradle of naval aviation, Pensacola, Florida. So similar to a lot of those that spoke before me, the Navy is extremely ingrained in my very essence. And so because of that, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the opportunity to acknowledge the 250th Navy birthday. And so for that, we're extremely grateful. We will continue to serve our veterans in our community. As the County Veteran Service Officer, we do make it our mission to recognize all services. But today, of all days, we recognize the Navy. And you can also rest assured that we will be back for the Marine Corps birthday. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all of you being here to speak on this today, and we will now bring it up for comments from the commissioners. I'd like to kick us off. Vice Chair Williams.
I'll keep mine very simple. Happy birthday, Navy.
Commissioner Applegate.
So I never served, but I had a father and a brother who they serve, and his brother's serving right now. He's actually stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. He was part of the nuclear program. Now he's playing electrician's mate. So I guess you could say the electrical work kind of runs in the family. So, and Dad served during Vietnam era. He was a crash crew. His craziest story was when he almost foamed a Blue Angel when it landed on the runway in what was that town? The one on the Florida Panhandle, but can't remember. But thank you too for the veterans that showed up this morning, the people that spoke. Thank you for your service. I see, our sailors and our Marines that are here, so appreciate that.
Commissioner Nelson.
I'll just also echo my gratitude. Thank you for your service. And I am struck by the dedication that individuals give to our country and to our national security. And it's not something that we should ever take for granted. So thank you.
And so tradition is to let the individual reading the proclamation do their comments last. I'll just make a few as well and say thank you again for all of you for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to do these proclamations because it is a reminder to all of us and those who attend and those who watch online of how important it is and how much we cherish our veteran community, how much we recognize the sacrifices that are required for our freedom here in the United States. I really appreciate the personal stories. It's also a great reminder that the individuals who serve also are family, and there are many impacts to those families. But I also think that those experiences impact us all when we hear those stories. In particular, I'm really grateful for D.A. Allen's mention that not only was their service to our nation, but it also helped form him as a person as well. And I think that's such an important piece of this is that those who serve do our country such a service, and yet there is always benefit to the service members as well for instilling the patriotism, the discipline, and the understanding of what it means to defend personally, to sacrifice personally. And I do think that's incredibly important. I also appreciate the mention of our founding, and it's never lost on me that we were the underdog as a budding American nation. And I think always appropriate to recognize, in my opinion, there was divine intervention for the founding of this nation and how important that is. So thank you to all who are here. Thank you to all who have served. Happy birthday to the Navy. Even though I know we all have a little bit of rivalry among the branches, and being an Army spouse myself, I certainly feel that, but it's all in good fun, and we are all one big military family. Thank you. Commissioner Wysong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, thank you for those that served in the Navy, taking time out of their morning to help us celebrate. And just a little kind of a tidbit, USS Constitution, it had a nickname called Old Ironsides. And that was because some of the British cannonballs actually bounced off the wooden hull. And just good old U.S. timber was just really made it a fundamental opportunity for the sailors of the USS Constitution that when they were the underdogs, they were able to look to something like that. And, it just gave them that much more hope. And as I said earlier, the perseverance to make the Navy is successful, defeat the British, and as it's been said, the country we have today. So again, thank you very much for helping us celebrate.
Okay, with that, I will call the roll. Commissioner Weissong,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Applegate,
Aye.
Vice Chair Williams,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. We will take a brief recess for a photograph. call this meeting back to order, and we are on item 7.
Item number 7 is comments by elected officials and commissioner liaison reports. 7A, readiness update for the 2025 coordinated election, November 4th, 2025. The briefing covers operational timelines, voter services, USPS coordination, risk management, staffing training, and cost sharing with participating jurisdictions. Steve Schleicher, Clerk and Recorder.
Again, good morning, Commissioner. Steve Schleicher, El Paso County Clerk and Recorder. Thank you for allowing me to nudge in. I know you have a very busy day, but I just wanted to share with you, we have an election coming up, and I want to highlight some important dates that I think is most important. So for those that are listening in, I do have a PowerPoint presentation, but we will post that on the Clerk and Recorder's website, and it will also be on the BOCC website as well. So September 9th, we mailed all of our UOCAVA ballots out to all of our uniformed and overseas citizens. And immediately we already started receiving cast ballots at that time. October 10th, which is coming up Friday, we will be mailing 500,746,000 ballots to all eligible voters here in El Paso County. So Monday morning, they will be dropped in the mail. By statute, it is supposed to be on Monday, but we know Monday is a holiday. USPS is closed, so my office moved up the mailing to Friday morning. October 10th, we will have all 41 ballot drop boxes open and available for those that want to sit there and cast their ballots. October 13th, which will be the following Monday, we will have the first VSPC in-person vote center open. And on October 27th, we will be opening up the other 11 VSPC centers, which brings the total to 12. And for this coordinated election is November 4th is election day. So all 12 VSPCs will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Final ballot deadline, it will be 7 p.m. Postmarks are not accepted. So I always share with folks is get out there early. Cast your ballot. We know what happened in November of 2024 is election night. We received 7 inches of snow. And if we remember that, so it's like weather permitting. But Madam Chair, Commissioners, I just wanted to share some key dates with you. Is Friday is going to be a big day, dropping all the ballots. And today we started our healthcare facilities. If you did not know, my office visits all the healthcare facilities and hand delivers the ballots to our seniors in those facilities. So we have our bipartisan judges that showed up this morning, and they are already out there visiting with our seniors throughout our community, allowing them to vote as well. So I will provide you updates throughout the election, and that's all I have for you today.
That was very fast and efficient. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
For such an important update. Thank you for making sure that voters are familiar with that. Are there any questions for the clerk? Commissioner Nelson.
Can you repeat the number of ballots that you are sending out?
Absolutely. So 500,746, but Commissioner, that does not include the UOCAVA or the healthcare facilities. So if you want an exact number with the UOCAVA ballots and the healthcare facility ballots, I will most certainly email that to you.
Oh, that's all right. I just was trying to put it in context of how many citizens we have in the county is around 750,000. So there are a lot of
Absolutely.
people out there not registered to vote.
Yeah, we have the most active voters in the state of Colorado.
Oh,
so
that's
we do
wonderful.
exceptionally well here in El Paso County.
Good job. Thank you.
Commissioner
want-
Applegate.
I wanted to ask the question. So you'll have ballots in hand Friday. We start sending those out. And because I know Monday's a holiday the next day, so Tuesday's when most people would have their ballots in hand. At what point should they call if they don't receive a ballot? And what's the good number for you guys?
Commissioner, that is a very good question. In fact, we will have voters have their ballot in hand on Friday. They will also get it on Saturday as well. But I will sit there and say is if somebody does not receive their ballot by the following Friday, to call my office. So we could sit there, which would be 719-575-VOTE, which is also 8683. We already have our phone judges in place. We're taking questions as we speak with folks that are wanting to register to vote. So things are picking up. But I would say the following Friday. And one thing is, though, Commissioner, is we now have the ability is thankfully with the Board of County Commissioners, you all have supported me throughout the entire way when it comes to election security, is we now track every single ballot from the moment your ballot is printed inserted, processed, transported, and delivered to your mailbox. So if somebody calls and says, Steve, I have yet to receive my ballot, I can give them a specific date when it will be delivered to your mailbox.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for bringing us this information. Thank you for all the hard work, and thank you to the entire Clerk and Recorder's office for all the hard work that I know is going into this election. Please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll share that with them.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other countywide elected officials still in the room, and I don't see anyone online, so we'll bring it up here, beginning with Commissioner Wysong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last week, attended the first annual Colorado Manufacturing Partners. It was a very successful program, and everyone was very complimentary. Also attended the 29th annual UCCS Economic Forum. We had a water tour for the Fountain Creek Water District. And then Saturday, participated in the Bear Creek Nature Center this time instead of the dog park. Trail cleaning, cutting back some of the vegetation and invasive weed removal. And this week, yesterday, did the groundbreaking, which was a great program that was approved a couple of years ago by the Board of Commissioners, but it's Whitefield School District 3, the Careers in Construction Colorado, and Habitat for Humanities broke ground for 41 home project that it was basically talked about homes for educators. They'll be reserved a third of them, so a great program. And was able to get an update yesterday from UC Health, and they have continually improved their level of service. And it's just something just very exciting to see what UCC Health is doing in the community. Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Last week, several of us were able to attend the Colorado Springs Utilities tour to learn more about our infrastructure and get a tour of the coal plant, which not commonly expressed, but coal is actually a very clean form of energy. And so when you're outside and seeing the atmosphere, I-25 puts out way more emissions into our atmosphere than that plant. And so it was really neat to be able to get in there and see how it all works and get also a little outside tour of the natural gas facility, and then the wastewater treatment plant, and then our freshwater facilities, and just learning all of this infrastructure. And I think it's really unique for many communities that our CSU utilities are a nonprofit. And so, as we see rates increase, that is not because anyone's making profits, but due to changes in legislation, for example, that are mandating that we shut down the coal plant in the future, and they're having to diversify the portfolio of our energy needs through just putting out other options, and that there's cost to that. And so it was just very informative. I enjoyed it a lot and helped me to understand just more aspects of this role and decisions that we make with land use considerations. Thursday, I gave the welcome address at the UCCS Economic Forum, and enjoyed that opportunity and speaking with many in our community that are business related, and just kind of learning about different aspects of our community in that sense and how we can flourish. Tomorrow is a Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority meeting, and I just, this maybe is a little unconventional, but I want to take this opportunity to just thank the brave staff of our school districts that will be showing up to work tomorrow, and I want to encourage parents to take time to hear both sides. I just cannot express how angry I am at some of the decisions that individuals are making for political reasons. And with the strike that is going to take place, and there's talk of busing in people from outside of our community, and I just really want to inform our residents that this is purely political. The union admits that they are trying to mobilize for the upcoming school board election, and it is at the sacrifice of children. And to put it in context, the school district raised teacher compensation for new teachers from $42,000 to $50,000 last year, an $8,000 increase, and yet they're going to strike tomorrow because of a decision that was made 11 months ago to not renew the union contract. So this is not about working situations or pay. It is about power and control of a private organization over a public institution. And for my part, that's why I made the decision back in December to vote to not renew this contract, because it was giving control to a private organization over a public institution rather than it being in the parents and the community and the electorate's hands. And so for those parents who are wondering what is going on and whether they should bring their children to school tomorrow, I highly encourage you to do so. That is where they belong. They need to be in school, and I can assure you that the school district will do everything possible to make sure that it is safe. And if you're someone that has a sub-teaching license, then, sign up and help us keep schools open, because they are manipulating, using children for political reasons. And again, I just cannot express how angry I am that this is happening at this time. It's not a coincidence. Ballots are mailed on Friday, and the decision was made 11 months ago. And so just want you to be informed. Take the time to hear both sides. And for anyone that's considering whether to cross that picket line, I just ask you to ask yourself why. Why would you not work tomorrow and serve the kids? And make sure you truly understand that reason if you decide to not show up for the kids tomorrow. So thanks for that time listening.
Commissioner Applegate.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, Wednesday, I also was in attendance of CSU. They had they gave us a tour of Ray Nixon Power Plant, showed us Front Range, showed us the wastewater plant they had down there. They showed us the Fountain Valley Authority, which was not their potable water station, where they were bringing water up from the Southern Delivery System. Very cool, very neat, and shows what utilities, what they have to do and have to obtain. It's a shame that our governor is demanding that we come off of coal by the end of the decade. It really puts CSU in a time crunch, and I hope I can be there to help in any way, because we've got to look at alternative fuel sources, alternate ways to power our community. Hence, like hydrogen, nuclear. It's just, we've got to look at other options, because they want this gone away. The next day, Thursday, we were at the Economic Forum. I think it was a couple of other commissioners in attendance. So very good event, good presentation. And on Monday, yes, I also attended the groundbreaking for the Rising Moon, and that's over in the Colorado Center and Whitefield School District. Yeah, about a third of those houses are going to be reserved for teachers from District 3. Something was rather encouraging. I asked one of the school board members, I said, I was like, the students are going to be working on some of the houses, and he said they're actually going to be producing about 1 or 2 a year, District 3. And he said they work faster than the other schools that are going to be collaborating on building some of these track homes. And I was like, that's very cool. So awesome. So way to keep up the good work and continue with the mill. And to echo what Commissioner Nelson said, it's a shame what is going on tomorrow. These teachers are getting ready to walk out, that they're not going to be educating our children. I was actually out walking for a candidate that I'm supporting, and I had a resident knocked on their door, and they said, "Well, I don't have children." And they said, "Why should I vote this year? Who cares?" And I said, "This starts from the bottom. This starts from lower levels. You got to vote in these off-year elections. You have ballot issues. There were city councils in these smaller municipalities. There's a lot of races going on. There's school board members. This starts from the bottom. These boards are going to control and steer the direction of a school district and these high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools that are going to be responsible for educating our children. And I hope that most people would think that is important. So if I can ever fire up the community and say, get out there and vote, this is it. I mean, this is a year. Get out and vote, please."
Vice Chair Williams.
Yes, I just wanted to announce actually what's on my schedule for this week. I don't have anything to report on. I have PPACG and PPRTA tomorrow, and I too disagree with the strike in District 11 by the union members. I think the union members need to be thinking about the kids' education and not about the election coming up, which is essentially what they're doing, is taking a day off to go out and knock on doors and make sure that they can control the amounts that they get instead of teaching the children in District 11. Thank you.
Appreciate all of the comments from my colleagues this morning. I want to touch on something that's actually somewhat kind of related in a tangential way, and that is I spent much of my day, actually more than a full day on Friday and also time on Thursday, participating with Colorado Counties, Inc. To try to impact some of the upcoming legislative session. One of the things that we discussed was the state strategic growth plan, which came out of a lot of talk around land use. And I think in the last couple of sessions, I am very concerned about the direction of our state in many ways, but this particular plan is very concerning to me. And I want my colleagues to be aware of what's in it, and I want the community to be aware of what's in it, because it is absolutely trying to force all local governments to focus on density. And I am a huge private property rights advocate, and I do believe that we should allow the market to drive these decisions. But the state is wanting to force things on all of us locally that are very concerning to me in the name of, though they're doing it under a lot of guises. I think that most of it is under their concern for climate. They specifically mention they want people out of their cars. They do not want the American dream for residents. They do not want a yard and a picket fence. They want to see us all living in boxes stacked on top of each other in a downtown environment. And they make ridiculous claims that they want to protect ag land. They don't care about ag land. They hate agriculture. It's a guise to try to get as many people on board with their ridiculous centralized planning. But it's very concerning to me. And as these conversations were happening about a lot of things, I heard commissioners across the state, Democrat commissioners from across the state specifically say things like, well, we've got to protect our ag land under, trying to get all kinds of more control and force people to live in the environments that they want to force people to live into instead of allowing people to choose the life that they want to live. And when the organization mentioned that there would be opposition to some of these ideas, they said, well, private property rights activists will probably be opposed to some of these ideas. And the question was asked, well, who would that be? And they said, people like the Farm Bureau. And I just could not believe the irony of you have elected officials trying to say this is to fix concerns with ag land, and yet you have the people fighting against these same things with the Farm Bureau. That should tell you something, that the elected officials who are pushing these things, it's not about ag. It's about control. It's about getting people out of their cars, trying to force them into the types of cities that they want them to live in. Control your life, take away your car, prioritize spending on all kinds of transit and not fix our roads, which we've seen happen for years, all in the name of climate, just like trying to take away our coal plants. And it's really all about control, which is also related to what Commissioner Nelson talked about. And the reality is this isn't good for residents. We're seeing costs increase. And regardless of how you feel about the climate, the reality is none of the things that are being forced on us will ever affect anything related to climate change. There's just not enough of an impact. It's just not the reality that we live in when we live in a world where China is constantly polluting, where we have all kinds of background ozone, we have all of these different things that are affecting our ability to widen our roads and fix traffic congestion. And so it's just really disturbing to me to see the direction that the state is continually going, and I want everyone to hear that and know that as I'm hearing about electricity rates going up, utility rates going up, and I'm hearing so much outrage over that, and I completely understand why people are outraged. But locally, we are being forced constantly by the state to do more and more of the things that we know our citizens do not want. And the reality is, when it becomes law, we're in a really tough spot. Our power is derived through the state. We don't have the power to override the state. And so I understand there's a lot of frustration about things going on locally, and I would ask you to look to who is making the rules, look to who is making these laws, and start thinking about the Colorado that you want to live in, because it is certainly coming at a very rapid pace, and the state doesn't seem to care what you want or how you want to live your life. With that, I want to end. Today is October 7th. And I think it's important for us to mention that we are at the 2-year anniversary of the atrocities that were committed in Israel, that more than 1,200 Israelis and foreign nationals were killed 2 years ago in the most horrific attacks, I think, on civilians that I have seen. That included 46 US citizens. There were 251 hostages seized. 48 of those hostages have not returned home 2 years later. And only 20 of them are believed to be alive. I just think we should not forget the atrocities that have been committed and the attempt to demonize the Israeli nation, the anti-Semitism that we have seen on the rise here in the United States on the left in particular, and the violence that has been escalating in both anti-Semitic ways as well as many others. We absolutely have to remember this terrible day, and we have to recommit to no political violence in this nation. And with that, we will move on to item 8.
Item number 8 is community service organization reports, and there are none.
Item 9.
Item number 9 is public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda. And Madam Chair, I'm aware of one person signing in to speak and one person that would like to be called in.
Okay, if you are here to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, I ask you to come forward at this time. As a reminder, we do ask you to state your name for the record, and then you will have 3 minutes.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Jack Busey. I live in Glen Eagle. I've been there for about 35 years. Used to be chair of the El Paso County Housing Authority for a number of years. I'm here because I want to discuss some of the issues with the roads in Glen Eagle, specifically Northgate and Struthers. I have a little 66 MG. I've almost lost it in one of the potholes on Glen Eagle Drive. I've also, since 2016, roughly, been in contact with various people regarding the roads in Glen Eagle. The condition, I've sent photographs, and I've gotten some responses, but I think they haven't been adequate. Regarding the area, at Northgate and Struthers. I'm guessing around 300 feet. I didn't measure it, but it really needs to be repaired. I understand it's on the docket for, not docket, but what do you call it? For 2026, on a contract for 2026 to be repaired then. It seems like a long ways away. One of the things that I found is when I was commissioner, or excuse me, well, I was commissioner, chairman of the Housing Authority, at one point I was going to stop doing that. I spoke with Jeff Green at the time, he was administrator, and he said, you know, are you quitting? And I said, well, you know, I only want to do this for so long. He said, well, how can I get you to continue doing it? And I said, well, there's an area of Glen Eagle Drive that really needs to be repaved. And so he agreed to repave it, and I said, okay, I'll continue to be commissioner. It took him 3 days, and that area was repaved. So as far as 2026 and that area between Northgate and Struthers, I really have no understanding of why that can't be completed. Also, my question is, the city completed a new roundabout in that same vicinity. Why is it the county couldn't coordinate with the city and when all the cones were there, complete that area? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will have, let's see, do we have someone online?
You speak.
Okay, thank you. Dear Commissioners, my name is Gavin Rainey, a lifelong resident of this county. Many, if not all of you, are Christian. Commissioner Williams, you and I are even members of the same sect. I speak before this board to ask you all to act as Jesus would and show caring towards the homeless instead of the hate and vitriol that is so popular today. I understand there have been multiple acts of violence perpetrated by the unhoused population, but these perpetrators do not represent the entirety of those down on their luck, and they should not be treated as such. The solution to homelessness does not lie solely in more policing or harsher enforcement. It jointly lies in compassion and an effort to understand. We as a community must do everything in our power to help. Increasing mental health services, moving towards affordable housing, and removing our bias against them are just a few ways to address this problem. These people have to experience the worst our environment has to offer, have to go days without knowing when their next meal will be, and face dangerous situations more often than all of us would find comfortable. Please show compassion and empathy when you move forward on addressing this issue.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else in the room that would like to speak on an issue that is not on the agenda? And we have no one online. We'll move to item 10.
Item number 10 is the called up consent calendar, and there are no items called up today.
Item 11.
Item 11 is department and committee reports, non-action items. 11A, 2026 budget hearing number 1, preliminary balanced budget and statutory presentation of the 2026 preliminary balanced budget. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
I will let our Deputy County Administrator, Sunny, address us before we go into Ms. Simmons' presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So good morning, honorable commissioners and members of the public. I'm here speaking on behalf of Brett Waters, who couldn't join us this morning, but he did have a few comments that he asked me to state. So we are grateful for the opportunity to present the proposed 2026 El Paso County budget to you today. This proposed budget represents countless hours of work by our budget team, who many of them are here today, so thank you for all of your work, under the supervision of Nikki Simmons, our CFO. Brett and Nikki have coordinated extensively with both our countywide elected officials and our county executive directors. We are pleased to present a fiscally responsible budget that continues to support essential services for county residents, including public safety. While we do not recommend adding positions to the proposed budget, we also present a budget with healthy financial reserves and, importantly, without recommendations for operational or personnel reductions. The success of this budget is due to fiscally conservative and disciplined budget management for several years that includes limiting added positions, increasing our financial reserves, exemplary budget forecasting by our budget team, and dedicated oversight from the Board of County Commissioners. As always, we appreciate the dedicated leadership of the County Commissioners in support of the residents of El Paso County. Thank you for your consideration of the proposed 2026 El Paso County budget. And we'll turn it over to Ms. Simmons.
Thank you. Ms. Simmons.
Thank you, Commissioners and Deputy County Administrator Bryant. Brett and Sunny's comments just now kind of sum up everything very well. So I guess I can just be done. We're really excited to be here today to present to you administration's proposal to you, the Board of County Commissioners, what should be in the budget for 2026. So to start off with, this is the proposal from county administration on what should be included in the budget for this year. This kicks off our open public hearings where the public is invited to participate in the process. The Board of County Commissioners will hear from several departments and offices on the needs that they have for their budget going forward into 2026. And then through this process, the commission will have the opportunity to change this into the commissioner's budget if there's any needed changes. And as we go through this, I'll explain where we're at in the process and what opportunities we have for updates. So to start off with and to reiterate some of the comments that were already said, we went into this year's budget process very intentionally to create what we considered a recession-resistant budget. This is a very similar approach to what we've done over the past 3 years in understanding that we're in sort of uncertain economic times. And I think we've done a good job over the last couple of years because as we've already noted, we are not recommending any cuts to operations or personnel, which is dissimilar from other organizations locally and throughout the state, and I believe throughout the nation. We are, not planning on asking to dip into reserves for ongoing expenditures. We have sufficient reserves to weather us through several years of uncertain economic activity. But at this point, we're not asking to dip into reserves for ongoing expenditures. We are presenting a proposal that would dip into reserves, but those are intentionally built that way, and they're for one-time expenditures. We are including conservative sales tax forecasts, which has consistently been our practice, and we are not recommending any additions to our full-time employee authorizations this year. And the other thing that we do every year is ensure that everything that we're recommending ties to the county's strategic plan directly. And so we look at those 4 objectives that we have of infrastructure, service quality, community trust, and health and safety. And we ensure that everything that we are doing is guiding us towards accomplishing those objectives. So the way this presentation is designed is it kind of walks us through the budget process policy. As you're aware, we have an approved policy on how we approach the budget. And we use a base budget model in the general fund, and then other restricted funds are based on available revenues. So we have 5 completely what we call restricted funds, and those are the Road and Bridge Escrow Fund, which is the portion of the mill levy that has to be shared back with the jurisdictions, the cities and towns in which a property is located. And so what that does is that specific property, if it's located within an incorporated area, we have to share back half of the property tax that's allocated to our road and bridge mill levy. So for example, my home being in the city of Colorado Springs, our mill levy that's associated with that home, that goes to the Road and Bridge Fund. Half of that property tax would go to the city of Colorado Springs and half of it would go to El Paso County. somebody else's home that's in an unincorporated El Paso County, we retain the entire mill levy for the Road and Bridge Fund. And so that Road and Bridge Escrow Fund is basically in and out because we collect it and then it goes 100% back out to those municipalities. The Conservation Trust Fund is the GOCO lottery funds that are received based on an allocation basis underneath that law, and they can only be used for park projects and maintenance. And so those have been budgeted for. The Household Hazardous Waste Fund is collected through tipping fees from the waste dumps, as well as the bag fee, the disposable bag fee that was enacted several years back. Those go into the Household Hazardous Waste Fund and can only be used for recycling activities. The Schools Trust Fund is the funds that are collected at the time of at planning to be given back to specific school districts in which they were collected for, as well as the Falcon Vista Local Improvement District, which is special assessments collected for that area. All of those budgets are fully completed and included in your document if there's any more questions about them, but I'm not going to spend more time in this presentation on them. The next part of our process for our budgeting is to look at what we consider our partially restricted funds, in which we have restricted uses of the funds, but they are funded some with sales and property taxes. So the first thing that we have to do in our budget process is budget to pay our certificates of participation, our annual lease costs. At this point, we don't have any capital leases, and so we're only looking at the certificates of participation that we have. So for 2026, we have annual debt service due of $12.9 million on 4 different buildings. So our Criminal Justice Center is $3 million, and that, just to give an update, our final payment on the Criminal Justice Center will be in 2027. Our Judicial Complex was $5.6 million. Our final payments in 2029. The Citizen Service Center is $3 million. Our final payment is in 2036. And the Sheriff's Northeast Substation that we're all really excited about that's currently being built is $1.2 million. That is being funded from the public safety tax, and that continues through 2043. So all of that has been budgeted for. Then the next item we have to budget for is our self-insurance fund. This fund, as I always talk about, has 2 sides to it. We look at the risk side, which includes workers' comp, building insurances, property claims, and other liability claims. And we work closely with actuaries to estimate the costs that need to go into this fund, and that has been done. It also includes the health side, in which we utilize the Health Plan Trust Board, who makes decisions on what the benefits will be for employees for the upcoming year, as well as the rates. We work closely with consultants and actuaries to estimate those costs. And for 2026, we anticipate a total cost increase for health insurance to be 8%. We are passing a slight premium increase to employees of $2.66 a paycheck for employee only, to up to $11.12 per paycheck for employee and family. That represents about a 5% increase in premiums. And so for 2026, we are estimating that the total self-insurance budget will be $79.9 million, of which 65.6 of it comprised of the health side. So providing health insurance to your over 3,000 county employees costs about $66 million a year. The next thing that we move on to is the Department of Human Services. We are required to ensure that we can do our statutory match to the allocations that DHS at the state level gives us. So Human Services is funded through state allocations of state and federal funds to each county. So the state mandates that the county do those services and gives us estimated allocations for those. For 2026, we are estimating that our match will be $27 million. And we do that based on, we know half the year because they're on a state fiscal year, which runs July through June. And we take those amounts and we estimate what they possibly could be for the second 6 months of that year. And so we have ensured that we have that statutory match. We have to prove that to the state every year to ensure that we can accept our allocations, that we have enough sales tax budgeted to go into the fund to be able to meet that match. Wanted to point out for the 2025-2026 state fiscal year, which we're now in, a couple of the allocation changes. So we did receive increases in what we call county admin, which is actually the work done to enact the Medicaid program, and that it went up 8.8%. That being said, we just got notification that that will be reduced, and I don't have a number for what that reduction is, but some of that increase was based on the increased provider rates, which the special session decreased those rates. So we will actually see a decrease in our increase, and we'll update the board when we know more information. Our Colorado Works program, better known as TANF, increased 3.1%. And the CCAP, the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, increased $3.8 million, which was about a 16% increase. I want to be really clear there, though, that that actually gets us to about what we ended up with last year, because the state did, after the fact, come in with more money to cover some of those increased expenditures. So that is not enough money for us to come off of the freeze that we're currently on. It just kind of allows us to be at the level we currently are without risking overspending, because there are increased rates coming to that we have to pay for that out of. So this is not enough to allow us to come off of that freeze at this point. And then the last one is the one that's the most concerning, is that the child protection grants grew by about 0.5%, which with rising costs means an actual reduction in the amount that what we can do with that money, because as we all know, costs rise by more than 0.5% per year. And so we'll continue to work with the state on those child welfare allocations. But we have budgeted for what we think we will receive from them, and are prepared to do that. One thing that this budget does not include is the effects of how the state will enact the HR 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill. That changed how SNAP and Medicaid is administered, and it increases the number of times that we have to ensure that people are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. So and I'm going to say the wrong words and I apologize, the redeterminations and ensuring every 6 months versus every year, those kind of things. The allocations have not been changed due to that, and so this budget at this point does not change those. A lot of those things come into effect in October of 2026. So 3 months of this, our calendar year, but it's in the state's next fiscal year, so they have not let us know yet if that will be funded entirely by the state or if there's going to be a match requirement on the counties. And so we continue to work closely with the state, but also advocate at the state level to ensure that that is not passed to the county level and affect the budgets of the counties.
I have a question from Commissioner Nelson.
Sorry, I don't know if you want to get through the whole presentation and then take questions. Okay, so the comment you just made on the changes in guidance from federal administration on ensuring more accountability is sort of what it sums up as. That then will create essentially more work. And so you're saying that we're not sure if there will be funding to come alongside with the additional work that would be necessary to have that increased accountability. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, and I think maybe what I failed to mention is also we're not sure if there's going to be more work, because while we will have to do eligibility determination more often, I think the intent of that bill, and I don't, that's not my expertise, so I apologize if I'm saying this wrong, but the intent of that bill is that less people will actually be on those benefits. And so there may be a reduction in the number of people, but we're checking it more often. And so we don't know yet what that looks like. And so I just wanted to be clear, and we don't know what the state will do and how they will fund that if there is an increase in workload. Yeah. And so I just wanted to make sure that I was very transparent in saying that no effects of that have been included in this budget. What we're doing at this point is ensuring we're matching our statutory allocation. And then we will continue to monitor throughout the year. And if we need to come back for a budget change when we understand more about that, I just wanted to make sure that that was out there.
Okay, and then so the bullet point that says county admin increase of $2.5 million, Can you define that for me? Because now I
Yes.
think I'm.
So
confused.
county admin is the portion, it actually comes from HCPF, the Healthcare Policy Financing, and that is the amount that we're receiving to administer the Medicaid program. But that really gets us to what we spent last year. So while the allocation increased, it really is helping us cover what our actual expenditures already are.
Okay, and you said on Medicaid, not SNAP.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I just want to add a bit of a comment because this is a complex issue, as we know, because there are a lot of things that are moving on this. I think you described it well, but I want to be clear that when you said that the intent is that fewer people will be on it, what is actually the intent is that people who are ineligible won't wrongly be on it, and that we will be able to eliminate, because of those additional accountability checks, any fraud or abuse of the programming, which potentially leads to fewer people receiving benefits, but those are people who should not be eligible to receive benefits. So I think, just to be clear, and this is a very sensitive topic, there's been a lot of talk about it, so I want to be clear on that point, and that we, again, these are new things, and we don't know exactly how, we don't all have our crystal ball, right? And so we're kind of in a wait and see to some extent on, once it's implemented, what the full effect is. And I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear for those who are listening, who have probably heard a lot about this topic, that that's what it has to do with, is that accountability, saying, hey, if you're not eligible, you shouldn't be on this program, instead of having government dollars go to folks who are ineligible. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the clarification. Unless there's more questions on human services, our next partially restricted fund that we budget for is our Road and Bridge Fund. And as we're aware, Road and Bridge is a significant portion of the county's infrastructure and a key priority in the county's budgeting process. We are on a multi-year plan to address a backlog of road infrastructure maintenance. And this budget includes proposed one-time funds of $7 million in addition to base funding. And so overall, it brings the Road and Bridge Fund budget to right at $40 million, which is stable with the amount of money that we've been putting in the last couple of years. We were able to do this through an increased ongoing allocation, as well as those one-time funds of $7 million. And those come from continued underspending from the county and a priority of putting those back into roads. The total public works budget is $59.1 million, and public works, so that other $19.1 million sits in the general fund. It covers the engineering, the stormwater, the administration of road and bridge, and fleet. And so all of the $59.1 million together is really what we're spending. Directly on roads is $40 million. And then what this will do, and we'll talk more about this in the presentation, as well as you'll hear from our Executive Director of Public Works here in a couple of weeks during his presentation, but it allows Public Works to continually make progress improvements on our pavement quality. We rate that on an annual basis, and it allows us to make progress in increasing that and not letting our roads actually degrade. And so we have done a lot of analysis to see what that correct number is through the work that we're doing on our strategic plan. And we have identified a target number, and this gets us there. This is the target amount that we want to be putting into roads on an annual basis to continue to increase the quality of our roads. I apologize, I'm having tech issues.
I was just going to say, it's been spinning in the middle of your slide for a
Yeah,
bit.
I noticed that, and I was like, please, hoping that's not.
Yeah, and I will comment on this. This actually, in a time where, with a recession-resistant budget, we're still trying to continually improve our roads, which we know is one of public safety and roads is one of the biggest requests of our citizens. And so I'm really happy that we're continuing to do this.
Thank you for that comment, Commissioner. Yeah, we As much as I would want to put the $7 million in ongoing, we want to ensure that we can commit to it every year. And so we are every year making it a priority, but ensuring that our budget can weather these uncertain economic times. I apologize for the delay. The one that's on the screen. I wonder, would this work if, I know it's not as pretty, but if I just did, nope, the internet's not pulling. Nancy, this presentation is all, I failed to mention, actually it's part of the end of my presentation, but this presentation is also on the county's website in an Adobe version. So it is already out there for the citizens to go through. So I don't know if that version would possibly work better, or if this is just a bandwidth issue.
I think let's take a 5-minute recess and see if we can't figure out what's going on. So we'll just take 5 minutes. Okay, I'll call this meeting back to order and turn it back over for Ms. Simmons to continue her presentation.
Thank you, commissioners. And I think I finished on Road and Bridge, and we were trying to get to the next slide. So this slide just shows the overall sources of revenues that we are planning for in the 2026 budget. That being said, as we're aware, many of the revenue sources that come in for county government are completely restricted and have no discretion on where we put those into. And so we just put an idea, the overall revenue budget is $501.5 million. But after you remove the restricted revenue sources, It's 309 million is what we're able to use to allocate to the various funds. And we'll go through those in a little more detail. For the unrestricted sources of our revenues, the sales and use tax, the 1% general sales and use tax, makes up about 60% of our revenue budget. And so with that, and that's the, obviously the most sensitive to the economic conditions of the economy, we watch that very closely. So the most current information that we have is through July of 2025, which is information we received from the Department of Revenue in September, is that sales and use taxes are up 0.9% over 2024. So fairly flat. And so we are watching those very closely. We are conservatively forecasting being up 2.5% for 2026. I understand the state is using 3.1%, their economists, and we work closely with those economists and get their information, but we're trying to be a little more conservative than that. So this budget includes a 2.5% estimate over our 2025 estimates. That being said, and we'll talk about this more later in my presentation, but the county has sufficient reserves to weather economic conditions. And so while 2.5%, when we're only getting about 1 to 1.5 this year, might seem a little aggressive, we are confident that even if we don't hit that number, we have sufficient reserves to be able to continue operations the way that they are and weather this economic flattening. With that, we have an estimated the 0.23% public safety sales and use tax. The estimate is $39.4 million, which is flat with 2026 or 2025 projections. So overall, you can see how our sales taxes have been trending since 2016. And we have this huge year here in 2021 of 22.1%. So we kind of discount that out of there because we all know that that had a lot to do with some like inflationary measures that were in place. And so we not only saw increased sales taxes, but we saw huge inflation during the same time. But our average sales tax, when you look back, is actually about 6.9, or actually last 5 years, 7.3%, but over the last 25 years is 6.9%. And so budgeting for a 2.5% increase is fairly conservative, in our opinion. Property taxes are a little more forecastable. And so we are increasing our revenues to $90 million. These are based on the preliminary certification evaluation that we received from the assessor's office. We will receive a final certification around the week of Thanksgiving. And we really appreciate the work of the assessor's office because they get that to us earlier than they statutorily have to, so that we can plan for our final budgets. With that, there are several mill levy laws that are in place that we make sure that we follow. We follow Tabor with our property taxes. We also follow the 5.5% mill levy restriction. In addition to that, in the legislature over the last couple of years, they've changed property taxes several times. And one of the things that they have done is they instituted a new 5.25% growth cap on jurisdictions. El Paso County, as an entity, is not subject to that 5.25% restriction because we are subject to Tabor and the 5.5% limits. If jurisdictions had waived Tabor and waived the 5.5% restriction through a vote of their people, they are now subject to the 5.25% restriction, which works a little bit differently. And I'll explain that more later because it does affect our public improvement districts. But I'm not going to talk too much during this because it does not affect the El Paso County mill levy. So due to Tabor, which is the more restrictive of the two limits that we have to follow for property taxes, we are issuing an estimated 1.374 mill reduction, which is about 16.2% of our overall mill levy to be in compliance with Tabor. And so we are issuing that credit, but we're also issuing an abatement mill of 0.035 mills to recapture abated taxes over the past year. And what this does is it allows for property valuation growth to be higher than the growth in property taxes. And so when you get your assessment in the mail and your assessed valuation grew by 20%, that does not mean the taxes paid to the county will grow by 20% because we only can grow them in compliance with Tabor, which restricts how much revenue can come into the county.
Yeah, I really appreciate you explaining that. I know this is a very complicated issue, especially for new commissioners that were not here during the huge valuation changes that happened just as a result of what was happening in the economy and primarily, I think, because of inflation and the things that we were seeing. There's so much conversation, lots of confusion for homeowners on, why increases were happening and, what were we doing, to be able to impact that? And there was a special session. And ultimately, our property owners saw far less than what they were hearing across the state or even what was on those estimated valuations that they received because of Tabor. And so it was an interesting thing for us to be able to talk to our residents about how Tabor was indeed protecting them on their property taxes. But I also want to point out, because of this first bullet, for anyone who may be watching, property tax revenue increase of 6.45, that does not mean that we are raising property taxes. It's, we won't, obviously the assessor will make those valuations, but it could also be additional properties in El Paso. We know that we are still a growing community. So when new things are built, new property taxes come in. So that's a portion of it. And I can't speak to what the assessment is unless you have some, great insight on that but I would hate to speculate on what people might see from that perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. So I only know El Paso County government taxes, not the overall, all the entities that show up on your property tax bill. And we'll talk about that in a minute because as we're all aware, we're a small portion of the property tax bill. But for the taxes being paid in El Paso County, that 6.45% increase is really growth, new construction. So Tabor limits us to new construction and CPI. And so what it essentially does is, on average, the average property owner would only ever, for El Paso County's portion of the taxes, see their property tax bill go up by the consumer price index, because the assumption would be that the rest of the growth in the county's revenues is due to those new constructions. So we're giving the same property the same taxes in real dollars, and we're not increasing taxes on them besides by CPI to keep up with the cost of goods and labor. And so you're correct. We would not be, the average homeowner's taxes would not be going up by 6.45% because that 6.45% encompasses the new construction.
Commissioner Nelson.
Can you just put a number to that CPI so people have an understanding of what they can anticipate their property
It's
tax?
2.7%.
Thank you.
At the same point, that doesn't mean that they will see a tax increase of 2.7%. It means we are limited, so complicated, we are limited to any kind of revenue increase. At the same point, the valuation of their home is what's going to determine what is happening with their personal taxes, as well as the many, many districts that they live in, of which we are only a small portion.
That's correct. So for El Paso County, our average to the average property owner would be that 2.7 plus growth. But that's averaged out through everybody. So if somebody saw a decrease and somebody saw an increase, like all of that gets averaged in. So it's not specific to each property. And again, it's just El Paso County. So if a school district is detabored, they're not following this. They can issue the entire growth in the mill levy. And so, but our portion of the taxes is limited by Tabor. So you can see how our overall property tax revenues increase, and you can kind of see the biannual assessments happening. And as you're aware, El Paso, in Colorado, we do biannual assessments. And so every 2 years, you'll see a larger increase. And then the other years, not as much. The other thing that is really hard to see in this chart is that there are changes in the abatement mill. So for example, in 2024, there was a larger amount of taxes abated. So we had to recover that through an abatement mill. But then going into 2025, the abatement mill was very, very small because almost no taxes were abated. And so while the 6.45% looks like a larger increase on that, it includes taxes that were abated from 2025. So a lot of very confusing parts going through here, but overall, these are the increases. In addition, really excited to announce, I'm trying to find my slide. Okay. We, during 2024, our overall county revenues, not just property taxes, but our overall county revenues, inclusive of sales tax, state grants, fees, charges, we have an overage of $4.48 million. So we are planning to refund that to residential property taxpayers. It'll be approximately $19 per household. You will see that as a credit on your 2025 taxes payable in 2026. So essentially that tax bill you get in January each year from the county treasurer's office, there'll be a credit of $19 per household on that bill. And then this is the chart I was speaking to earlier. And of course, because every year gets a little more complicated, this year's a little more complicated than last year, where this is the first year, because of that special session with the new property tax laws, that we have a bifurcated assessment rate. So your home is assessed at a different rate for school districts than it is for local governments. And so you no longer can just take your overall value of your home and multiply it by a specific rate. You have to do different rates for different organizations. And so for 2025 taxes payable in 2026, we had a 6.25% assessment rate for local governments and a 7.05% rate for school districts. So essentially, we will tax your home as if, so we take an average home in El Paso County, which is right at $500,000, and we tax it as if it's worth $31,250. A school district can tax that same home as if it was worth $35,250. So a couple of things that means the portion of your taxes you're paying, more of it is going to be going to the school districts than it has in the past. And then the second thing from that is later on, we'll talk about that does directly affect how much specific ownership tax the local governments will receive, because school districts will have a larger portion of the mill levy collected within every area. And so therefore more of that specific ownership tax will be directed towards the school districts. And so we have accounted for that going forward. And so on an average home, so this isn't actually a specific home that I think we took out of District 11. And so in this home that's worth $500,000, they would pay $2,820.73 in property taxes. Of that, $223 would go to El Paso County. So while the county treasurer's office is collecting $2,800, most of that's going to end up at the school district, a metro district, and then the city of Colorado Springs, El Paso County are like these little pieces over here, and then the library, and then a couple other smaller portions, including the Water Conservancy District. And so I think this chart is very helpful to understand like where the taxes are going that the county collects. In addition to that, we look at revenue changes that aren't property and sales taxes. So earlier I mentioned sales taxes are about 60%. Property taxes make up about 30% of our overall unrestricted revenue sources. And then the other 10% are other fees and charges. The major changes to fees and charges in our 2026 budget are the clerk and recorder fees. We are estimating those be up $1.25 million from this year's budget. That has a lot to do with the recording office. And this is actually getting them closer to numbers that we saw in 2021 and prior. And since interest rates have been so high nationwide the last couple of years, we haven't seen a lot of activity in that recording department. So while those fees are, and most of them are statutorily set, they're not set locally, we are getting closer to numbers we saw earlier in this decade. And that has to do with interest rates slowly coming down. People start refinancing homes, and people use the clerk and recorder's office to record those liens. And there also was a state bill that changed recording to a flat rate, which affected that revenue as well.
I just want to add something because you said something that I think is important, especially for the public, mentioning the portions of our tax revenue that are property, sales tax base, and then fees. And one of the things that I think is important to understand is that property taxes are the most stable portion, of course, of our budget. Obviously, you know that, but for the public, just to kind of point that out. But I think what's important about us keeping our property taxes low, it does mean that it can make it more difficult for us to forecast, but it also means that when citizens are struggling and not spending as much, it also automatically means that government is going to have to also be mindful and restrict what we are spending. And so just kind of wanted to point that out for the benefit of the public, that though it does make it a bit harder for us to forecast, I do think it assures the public that when they are struggling with the economy, we are also impacted by that, and that means that we, I think, are more responsive to citizens.
Then the last item on this slide, the treasurer fees, that is up $466,000 over the 2025 budget. But as you all have seen all year long, we've been exceeding our forecast in that. And that has to do with the statutory fee that the treasurer collects when collecting property taxes on behalf of other governments. And we have to work with them to estimate that long before those jurisdictions have certified their mill levies. And so this gets us more in line with where we're at this year, versus it's not actually a true fee increase for next year. Then we move on after we finished estimating all of our revenues. We work closely with every department and office to do that. We move on and look at our expenditure budget. So as you're aware, we use a base budget model in El Paso County. And what that allows us to do is encourage underspending, encourage departments to be responsible with their budgets. And as we mentioned earlier, we are not recommending any budget cuts or base reductions for 2026. And I think that's has a lot to be said about how we have approached the budget in years past and how we conservatively forecast, but also help departments underspend their budgets if it's possible, with the understanding that they can retain their budget ongoing. So we don't create that, what's the word I'm looking for, the normal process in, say, federal budgeting, where it's like, oh, we got to spend our money at the end of the year or we lose it for next year. We encourage departments to underspend. And so we are able to continue with that base budget model going into 2026. A couple of caveats. One, the Pikes Peak Workforce Center budget is no longer included in this budget that you'll see. With the new IGA, the Workforce Consortium Board will approve their own budget. And so that budget is no longer included in the county's budget. So while it looks like a reduction, it's not an elimination of that program. It just will be in a separate budget that will go to that board. Then what we do is we start working with every department and office. And we collect critical needs. We ask each department and office what's going on with them. And they let us know their largest needs. And then we start the strategy phase of our budget process, where we meet with every elected official in group meetings. So the countywide elected officials, the sheriff, treasurer, clerk and recorder, assessor, coroner, and district attorney, and we ensure that we all understand and are on the same path with the budget. We do the same thing with all of the department executive directors. And we do that to have a collaborative, comprehensive process that every one of the leaders who you entrust with running the county is on the same page with the budget. And so we did that process this summer. We met several times, and we have consensus on the budget that we're presenting to you. One of the largest priorities that we saw in the budget is ensuring that our investment in human capital management continues to be a priority. And as we mentioned earlier, we are not recommending any new additions of employees for this year. And the consensus between those leaders was to focus on the employees that we currently have versus adding additional employees. So we are recommending a 3% total compensation average adjustment for 2026. As we already talked about, CPI is currently projected to be approximately 2.7% for 2025. This compensation package would be allocated to elected offices at a 3% budget adjustment, and the elected officials are able to recommend how they use those funds for personnel. And then for county administrative departments, we are recommending a pay per performance model with a slight cost of living adjustment. And so those would primarily be based on performance scores and would be effective in January.
I know I'm interjecting quite a few times here, but I wanted to point out that pay for performance model is very much in line with our strategic plan on service quality and how we can ensure that our employees who are working the hardest for citizens, that we are incentivizing that service quality. So thank you for pointing that out.
Then, and we already talked a little about county road projects, but it is a significant priority in the county's budgeting process as well as our strategic planning process. Our objective one in our county strategic plan is to, sustainably fund our county infrastructure, and our roads are our largest portion of our county infrastructure. And there are several categories, but roads is the largest portion. We want to make sure we're looking at everything and funding it sustainably, but roads is the one that comes to the top every time. So as we mentioned, this gets $7 million one time into that budget, but then that total pavement preservation budget for 2026 is $12 million. That includes that $5 million of ongoing funding that allows us to continually make progress in the county's pavement quality index. And so one thing I wanted to point out is over the past little over a decade, the county has strategically tried to prioritize the road and bridge budget. So as I mentioned, the preliminary balance budget for the Road and Bridge Fund is just over $40 million. In 2014, it was $14 million. So we have made significant progress without raising taxes to put money towards roads and continue to make it a high priority in every single year's budget. This chart, very colorful, but it shows how we've gotten there in putting money in one time as well as ongoing to the road and bridge budget. In 2022, we were able to put direct ARPA dollars through the infrastructure pathways in ARPA into certain roads in El Paso County, but the remainder of these funds came from our unrestricted taxes, primarily through sales taxes, highway user taxes, and specific ownership taxes to be able to increase that ongoing allocation to the road and bridge budget. Here you can see that $5 million ongoing amount as well as that $7 million one-time amount. So overall, this chart.
Commissioner Nelson has a question.
I'm sorry. Does the if you go back a slide, yeah, those numbers, does that also include funding from the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority ballot initiative?
This does not. This is just county dollars.
Okay.
So, and you'll hear more from our Executive Director of Public Works when he does his presentation. I've already seen the draft, but he does a really great job of explaining how we utilize the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority dollars in conjunction with county dollars to get progress made on our local roads. Without the county dollars, I believe we would be pretty flat and that we wouldn't continue to make them a little bit better. The county dollars allow us to actually approach the pavement side and allow us to continue to increase that pavement quality.
Thank you.
So I can't get a
I
nod.
just want to say good job to all the people that really focused on the mission of county government, and that's supporting infrastructure and then like putting your money where your mouth is, and that you resourced roads and were very intentional in putting that funding towards that. So nice work, and we will continue to do that.
So while that chart gets a little confusing, we put it just in a much more simple line chart, which shows how we get to the budget each year. So you can see back here in 2015, 14.5 million being the ongoing budget for road and bridge. Then in 2026, 33.25 million being the base budget plus the $7 million of one-time funds. And we do intend on trying to get there every year. Just with, again, these uncertain economic conditions, we're hesitant to commit to that being part of our base budget in Road and Bridge. So as always, we want to talk about our Tabor revenue cap, which is the cap that doesn't just affect property taxes, but our overall revenues, inclusive of sales and use taxes, any state grants, fees, fines, charges, things like that. And so for 2025, we are projecting to be about $2 million under that cap. So we don't anticipate a Tabor refund for the following year. That being said, these numbers are very preliminary. The CPI just moving by 0.1% can make giant changes when we're talking about a $400 million base. Additionally, I have seen the state, because state revenues do count against our Tabor cap, they count against the state's Tabor cap when the taxes are collected. And then when the state sends that money to us to perform mandated services, it counts against our Tabor cap again. I have seen the state many times after the year end say, oh, the revenue that we gave you that you thought was federal money, it actually was state money, and change our number by $5 million in one journal entry. And so I just want to put that out there, that right now these are our projections, but they can change a lot based on state action. But we're pretty confident in these at this point. And then we're, just again, closely monitoring those. We have a great team in our budget office that meets monthly and ensures that we're tracking these very closely. As we've mentioned a couple of times already in this presentation, our conservative approach and fiscal responsibility to budgeting has allowed us to maintain sufficient reserves where we feel like we are capable of weathering some uncertain economic conditions and this flattening that we're seeing. We hold several reserves at El Paso County. So one of the things we're required to have is a minimum fund balance policy. Our minimum fund balance policy would require us to hold $29.5 million, but we actually hold significantly more than that. We are targeting a 23% fund balance reserve after we allocate operational savings to be available for spending, which we will do through the budgeting process. 16.67%, which is 2 months out of 12, so 2/12 is the best practice for your minimum. We, again, are targeting 23% right now, knowing that we're going into these uncertain economic times, which is what makes me feel very comfortable with the forecasts that we have, that even if we don't hit some of them, we will still be able to maintain our operations over the next several years. And so that had to do with us, again, I put on here the careful stewardship of the county's financial resources, conservative revenue forecasting, low FTE / ongoing additions. Our county administrator continually wants to ensure that we can sustainably afford any ongoing additions that we add through uncertain economic conditions, which is what you're seeing as the result of that today. In addition to that, we hold, in addition to that 23%, we're holding a $10 million emergency reserve that is available for appropriation by the Board of County Commissioners for any emergencies. In the past, we've used it for fires, flooding, emergency facility repairs, and it's replenished through year-end underspending and unanticipated revenues. So anytime we have revenues above and beyond our forecasts, we first look to replenish that emergency reserve up to that $10 million balance, but right now it is fully funded. We did use some of it last year to do our match for the NRCS and FEMA grants for the flooding, but that has been replenished. In addition to that, I want to make sure that everyone's aware, it's not just our general fund that has a reserve. Most of our restricted cost centers have their own reserves to ensure the continuity of those operations. So things like the public safety tax, our Parks Trust, e-recording, inmate processing, the inmate commissary, all of those are there and they're not included in the county's reserve. Then as we talk about all of the time, when we look at the preliminary balanced budget, we also look at the strategic plan and ensure everything that we're doing, even the base budget, is accomplishing our county strategic plan. So we look at these 4 items that I'm sure everybody sees all of the time, which are infrastructure, service quality, community trust, and health and safety. So the changes that you will see in the budget for next year are very minimal from this year's base budget. We are asking for $45,000 or $46,000 for our animal control contract. We are asking for $113,600 for our postage increase that has to do with the postal rates going up. As you're aware, we have a lot of statutory requirements to mail things. Most of those are in your elected offices. The treasurer's office has to mail tax bills. The assessor's office has to mail assessments. The clerk and recorder's office, as you heard this morning, is mailing ballots. And so most of that money actually is going into the elected official budgets. The 3% budget allocation costs us a net amount after grants of $6.7 million. And then the remaining items are we're asking for one-time use of fund balance for, which is parks. We are doing about a $2.1 million project to upgrade the tennis, pickleball courts, and archery range at Bear Creek Regional Park. This $800,000 is the remaining funding we need to get that project across the finish line. We have the other funding from some other projects that we didn't continue on. Public Works, we've talked a lot about the $7 million, so that's where that is in your budget. And the remaining 4 items on here are for your facilities department. 2 roofs, one at the DPW location on Acres, as well as this building, Centennial Hall, needs a new roof. Both of those roofs are the original roofs and need replacement, and you'll hear presentations from our facilities director on those later on. And then 2 parking lots that need to be replaced, one at the DMV East at Powers and Airport, as well as the other at the Criminal Justice Center. And so those are all of the changes that we're requesting to your general fund for 2026. As we've mentioned, we are intentionally keeping our FTE authorizations low, prioritizing current staff and currently authorized positions and not asking for increases in our full-time authorizations. The authorizations currently, which is the same as going into this 2026 budget, is 3,028. However, you will notice a difference from the 2025 original budget, which was 3,058, and those reductions happened at Pikes Peak Workforce Center and Public Health due to the reduction in grant funding. And so Pikes Peak Workforce Center, with their grants changing and their allocations from the state, those are fully grant funded positions. And then Public Health, as we're all aware, had significant COVID funding. And as the COVID pandemic is done, for lack of better words, the grant funding for that has gone away as well. And so we're continuing to decrease there. But the overall position authorizations in this budget is 3,028. The key dates of the budget are 2026, October 7th, the budget hearing number 1 is today, and that's where you're hearing the presentation of the preliminary balanced budget. Budget hearing number 2, October 21st. You'll hear from a couple of departments and offices that day, as well as your citizen outreach group with budget oversight for critical need hearings. But budget hearing 3 is on November 4th. That's the day, it's like my favorite day, we get to get up with you guys and do math in public and ask for the commissioners to give direction on the budget. That day is not an action item day, but what we'll do is ask each commissioner if there's any changes that they would like to make to the preliminary balanced budget to create the original adopted budget. And we would look for head nods. So one commissioner could make a proposal, and we'll see if there's 2 other commissioners that would be in agreement to making that change to the budget to ensure that when we present the budget on December 9th, we have a budget that the commissioners are willing to vote yes on. And so we'll be back for those dates. All of these budget sessions are open to the public. We invite and encourage public participation. And so if anybody would like to come and speak to the budget, there is public comment time on all of these budget hearing dates. With that, the last part of this is I want to show you the actual budget document itself. The commissioners, you have a printed copy in front of you. But the actual budget is online. We're really excited about this. It's a new platform. This is not a document we've had in the past. In the past, the preliminary balanced budget has been like a 10 or 12 page, very summarized document. We now have line level budgets for each and every office that is in your packet. And I'm going to show you where that's at on the county's website. So on the county's overall website, if you go to the budget page and you get into the county budget and presentations, we have a new software that we got this year, and you can click into the 2026 preliminary balance budget. That leads you over to a software called ClearGov. And what that is, you can dig into this, you can go in to see our fund balance estimates. So everything you have in your PDF is in here. It's just a little bit more navigable online, and it's designed to be on this online software. And so it allows the citizens, if they're interested in our budget, to see much more detail about the, for example, the parks projects that we're planning on doing next year with the funding that's in the base budget. And so some of that is in here. Road and bridge projects. So what are we planning on to do with our road and bridge fund? There's some drainage infrastructure of this wetland bank, and what we're planning to do in 2026 with those funds. There's a page for every department and office. So you can go down here and say, okay, what is the financial services team? What are their goals? It talks about our strategic plan. It talks about how much staff is in every area, any accomplishments we had last year, what our goals are for next year. And this was a huge effort by a couple of groups. One, our budget team that's in the room really did a ton of work to get this. It was, I think, an amazing project for transparency to our citizens on our budget and to be part of our budgeting process. And then the second group really is everyone else in the county. Every elected official, department director, and their budget teams or their financial teams had to give us a lot of data that they're not used to having to give us earlier in the year to be able to report this out for the use by the Board of County Commissioners as well as the citizens in looking at our budget. So wanted to thank everybody for this effort in 2025 to be able to create what I'm really excited about for transparency purposes. So that is on there. That's live. So I didn't do anything special. I went to the county's website. So this is live. We published it this morning. So it's out there to start our public inspection period. So if there are questions, we encourage citizens to reach out to the budget office. And there's information on the webpage on how to contact us. If there's questions, concerns, you want to talk through anything, we have more than willing to talk to anybody about the budget and hear suggestions from the citizens.
Okay.
So that is the entire budget. If there's any questions for me.
Questions? Commissioner Nelson.
On the slide where you're talking about health benefits, which I think is slide 4. So what is the increase to the county when you say the total cost increase is 8%, which I know this is very common. Just health insurance is increasing costs. So what is the dollar amount to the county? And if you need to come back to me later.
I might have to come back to that
fine.
later. I don't know the dollar amount off the top of my head.
Okay, I just think that would be interesting to know. You know, it looks as though the county is absorbing the vast majority of those costs rather than putting it onto the employees.
We are. We picked up significantly more proportionally than was passed to the employees.
So I would be curious to know what that number is and then that percentage of what the county covers versus what the employee covers.
Absolutely. We will get back to you with that answer.
Great. And then when you were talking about the reserves and targeting 23%, but then we also have this additional 10 million in emergency, is that separate or is that included in that 23%?
It is separate. So we are holding 23% plus 10 million.
So what would the total reserves percent be if you had the 10?
I'd have to get
Give
back
you
with
that
you
later
about it as
too,
well
yeah.
because I don't know what that denominator is off the top of my
that's fine.
head. But
Okay, thank you. And then the information that you just shared about what's available to the public to dig in and see is really exciting. Like, I can't wait to get on there and dig in myself. So good job on all the team that put that together. It looks like a lot of work, but really important and valuable for the community to be able to understand where those taxpayer dollars are going. So nice job.
thank you. I'm really excited. I'm really proud of my team. They did a lot of work.
I just have to say the amount of joy over the budget online, is inspiring. So thank you for the good. I hope that the team up there is excited to see how excited the commissioners are about the work that they've done on that. Commissioner Applegate.
Yes. So on the infrastructure, the additional was 7 million towards roads. Roughly what percentage increase is that? I was trying to reference last year's and I was trying to find it. I don't know if you have that information offhand.
Well, the thing, let me get back to where
What's the increase roughly? That's what I'm wondering.
Well,
What, like
so
millions
if
of
you
dollars in
look,
percent?
2025's budget was 39.8 million, and we're going to 40 million. So it's very flat to this year because last year we had 12 million one time in there. This year we have 5 million ongoing and 7 million one time, plus some pay increases for the road and bridge crew. So it keeps our budget very stable to last year. It's essentially the same budget as last year. But if you remember, we were utilizing one time, well, actually, you would remember because you were part of the budget process last year, I apologize, but we have been very intentionally using one-time savings from utilizing grants for restricted things to get money into our road and bridge budget. And we knew that after 2025, which was the last year we could do that, we would not be able to sustain the amount that we were going into road and bridge, but we actually were able to get there for this year with that use of one-time funds. So while it doesn't look like an increase, we anticipated ongoing that would decrease back to this base level of $27 million, but we were able to keep it at that $40 million amount.
Okay, gotcha. Right, because the ARPA funds, basically, that was what it was. We had dedicated ARPA funds towards the roads in the previous years, and now
ARPA was
that
able
well's dried
to
up.
cover things that we otherwise would have done in general fund.
Right.
So we budgeted them into ARPA, and we're able to use those savings. So we didn't put ARPA into roads except for this one $10 million amount.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, so just a couple comments. One of my favorite comments is we encourage our departments to underspend. We don't have if you don't spend it, you lose it. So there's not a big spend off from October to December. And I was looking at a website a couple days ago where, the person said every department overspends their budget in government. And that is just not the case in El Paso County. We encourage them to work together. We encourage them to underspend. We reward them when they underspend, and we also save up in many years for projects. And then the other thing I really enjoy about the way we budget is the amount of reserve that we have strategically built. I know before I was on the commission, there was an effort to strategically build our reserves. And when we've had to use that, it has, we've had it there instead of panicking because the state comes down and says, we need a few more courtrooms here and you have to build them. We're ready for that. And when we have a repair to a building that is a surprise, we're ready for that. And so where the state, instead of use some of their ARPA funds and their COVID relief funds maybe to hire full-time employees, we use them for one-time expenditures. And so where other governments are having to either use their reserve, cutting it down to the 3% minimum, or, cutting their government significantly, we're still being able, because we are so conservative in our budgeting process, we are still able to continue the operations of government, but also know that we always have that reserve there if something goes wrong. And so we see a lot of panicking this year by other governments over what's going on with their budgets and dipping into their reserves, which really worries me, where I feel our state government is perhaps dipping into the reserves too much and not strategically making staffing decisions that they should be making. But I'm not in control of the state, so that's okay. Whereas here we are very strategic about what our revenue estimates will be and trying to increase those things that we know will make a big difference to the public. And I really appreciate what the county administrator, what our finance department here are trying to do. I also really appreciate all of our department heads and our elected officials who are very budget oriented and very conscious about every taxpayer dollar that we get, because we know that every family is working hard, and we value the fact that we're just the stewards of this money they are sending to us. And we want to be able to spend it very carefully, so I appreciate that. Thank you for all your department's done.
Commissioner Nelson?
I have another one. Can you also provide, I would like to see kind of like a higher level snapshot of the budget and the categories that the funding is going to. So like I'm envisioning a pie chart that says X percent is going to public safety, another percent is going to roads, another percent is going to human services, and realizing that you know, our other elected official budgets are going to roll up under those. But I think it would be really helpful for the community to also be able to see the computer's got a mind of its own. I think it'd be helpful for the community to also be able to see what percentage of the overall county budget is going towards these specific categories.
So that is out there on this. It's in your pie charts, your presentation that you have in your binder. It's also on the for the overall on the website. So on this ClearGov software, you can go in and see how much is by fund. So your general fund is 51% of the overall county budget. Human services is 21%. And then if you click in to, and this is the chart I was having problems with, you can see like of general fund, how much is sales tax, property tax for revenues, but then you can go down to budgeted expenditures by function. So you can see how much is personnel, operating, and capital, or you can see it by sheriff. The one caveat I do want to say is you have to add sheriff and public safety together to get to the sheriff's budget. We just keep them separate because to us, they're two completely separate ways of budgeting. The public safety is the public safety tax, but it's primarily spent at the sheriff's office. And there's a lot of detail if you go into the department summary later under the sheriff's office. There's a graph that like shows you how that's broken down. But you can see of the overall $284 million general fund that it's primarily, and this looks like it's in order by percentage. So you can see that the sheriff's office is 26% plus this 13%. The district attorney is 9%. Then our AT department, digital strategy technology, is 7%. So that all of that is in the document. It wasn't part of my presentation, but it's in the document overall. So if there's more detail that you'd like than that, more than happy to get that for you. But we thought that these would be important for the citizens, as well as the Board of County Commissioners, to see the overall budget by department. And then once you can see that pie chart, which gets you tiny, tiny little pieces, but the percentages are on the side here. You can dig in and you can go down to the sheriff's office, for example, and you can see within the sheriff's office how they're spending money. And so you can see where their revenues are coming from, and then you can see their expenditures, where they're going. So they have, this is by business unit. So you can see that like 14% goes to patrol, but then you can see overall what their budget is. Now this percentage column here is a change column, so you can see their overall change by budget, but from budget to budget, and then highlights of their budget. And then you can see, like if you wanted to get in and see line level things about, for example, and it gets kind of confusing because some of the stuff you'll see that there's not budgets this year because we're comparing to a revised budget for this year. So a lot of our grants we do through supplemental appropriation. But you can go in and see like how much are we planning on spending on the fleet for the sheriff's office for this year. And it shows the overall budget for that. So you can see that in all of the departments. I'm going to pick on facilities here really quick. You can see what they've done, what they're planning to do in 2026, their performance measures for the overall strategic plan. But then you can see by cost function what they're planning to spend of their $17 million budget, where that ends up in. So you can see that 3.3 million is in utilities, by type, by percentage, but then you can also look overall like their janitorial budget is what it is for next year. So there's a ton of information in there, but it does all roll back up into the overall county budget summary. Does that help?
Yes, I might just play around with this a little bit and see. I think this is even like way more detailed than what I was thinking. Like if we have different buckets where sheriff's office, DA's office kind of roll under that public safety bucket. And then, you know, coroner would maybe be Department of like more of human services bucket. And so I would just be curious to see a breakout that way. But I don't know, maybe this is actually going to tell me what I want to know. So
Okay.
I'll let
And
you
you're
know.
not more than happy to get you whatever you need for
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
I think the breadth of our services probably makes it a little difficult to break it down into small enough to make the pie chart, but maybe not. I'm sure Nikki will work some magic. But I did want to ask, we obviously have restricted funds that are coming from federal and state. Is there a place that, as we were talking about, say, those matches, that it is noted that that is a required match?
I don't think you'll find that in this document, but there are places where, like, it's mostly in human services, right? And so,
As I'm looking at that, I look and I see those numbers in that pie chart, and I think as a citizen, I might think, well, why not reduce spending in this area or that area? But it's not going to be clear to them what is a required. So I don't, you know, it's not the end of the world. There's always plenty of context that is needed with all of this information. It's too complicated to boil down to, you know, being able to fully understand at a glance. But it was just a thought that I had that because we have restricted and then we have unrestricted, but then we also still have required matches. So it's not, it is unrestricted, but it's not really. You know, I mean, I understand from a finance perspective, it is to you all, but it's also from our perspective, that's not money that we're going to be able to spend in another area if we so choose because of the requirements. So just a little bit of a thought there.
yeah, and I agree with you, Commissioner, that, you know, it's difficult to articulate some of that because, like, with human services, say you said, okay, we want, you know, we're giving them $27 million of sales tax for the year to meet their matches. One, it's a statutory match to be able to set their allocations. We could decline the allocations, but then we wouldn't be able to meet our statutory duties. But if you said, okay, take $2 million from that amount and send that over to another area, you'd actually have to cut $10 million in expenditures from human services to take $2 million of sales taxes on average. And so it's not a one-to-one ratio by any means. And so that's a great point for the final budget. Maybe we can articulate some of that in the human services portion to be able to explain that budget a little further.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Well, I just want to say what a fantastic job you and your entire team have done and working to make it even more transparent to citizens. Unfortunately, our county administrator is not here, so I'll just say also thank you to our deputy county administrator, Sonny Bryant, but clearly this is a huge undertaking that has been going on for a very long time at the direction of the commissioners. I really appreciate from my time here. I have to say thank you to the past commissioners, and obviously Commissioner Williams has been here the longest, that began to prioritize those key things, our roads. And I know Commissioner Williams is very passionate about funding our roads well. But it started and has continued. It's so important that we continue to have that support from commissioners who want to prioritize those core services so that we can continue to improve our roads. You know, they're not perfect. The county is never going to be perfect, but we are certainly making huge strides to improve, and we have those measurements. I can't wait to see the presentation from Public Works where we have data-driven results that we can really look to and say they're correlated to what we have set at our priorities. So thank you for all of your work. Thank you for being very aware of what our citizens want in our community and working to fulfill what we were all here elected to do in the direction that's been given. Huge thank you to Brett Waters as well. He's been a tremendous asset to our community and to citizens and making sure that we are driving what the priorities are of this board. So I'm just really grateful for his leadership as well. And I just want to say, as we continue through this budget process, I hope that the citizens will come in and weigh in on this process. It's often a very quiet time of year. We don't get a whole lot of public comment, but I hope that we will have folks that come in and share with us their feelings. I think it's a lot. It can be overwhelming, but we do our very best to make sure that citizens have the ability to comment. So I will also say, Commissioner Williams said it pretty well, but the emphasis on we are not doing layoffs, we are not doing cuts, we are not furloughing employees. And that is due to long-term conservative planning that is different than what you're going to see at Colorado Springs. It's different than you're going to see in other smaller jurisdictions that I know that are struggling. It is different than what you are seeing at the state, because good governance matters. And who are sitting in these seats, and I'm grateful for the support, matters. And who is doing the work matters very much to the financial security of our community. It would be easy to be irresponsible. It would be easy to continue spending just because people demand more spending in certain areas, special interest groups included. But we know that our citizens want us to be fiscally conservative, and I believe that. I'm very proud of the work. We will always have room to improve at the county, and I know that neither this board nor our staff will rest until we just are constantly, we don't sit back on our laurels, so we're proud of the work that has been done up to this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
At this point, I don't see anyone in the room, but I will call for public comment on this item if anyone would wish to speak on this item. I don't see anybody in the room, and we have no one online. Okay, we are on to item 12.
Item number 12 is the addendum, and there are no addendums today.
Item 13.
Item 13 is the executive session, and there is no request for executive session.
Okay, with that, we've come to the end of this agenda. This meeting is adjourned.
Able to get that? There it is. That's all. Grab it. Oh, Nikki, show for me.
Good morning and welcome to the Public Improvement District Number 1 meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 7th. We will begin with item 1.
Item number 1 is department and committee reports, non-action items. 1A, 2026 preliminary balanced budget for the El Paso County Public Improvement District Number 1. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. Here this morning to present the budgets for the public improvement districts. So obviously start with Public Improvement District Number 1, which is your public improvement district that collects fees as well as the taxes from PIDs 2 through 5. So while Public Improvement District Number 1 does not collect taxes directly, I did want to speak to the 5.25% revenue limit that is going to affect PIDs 2 through 5 because that will affect the overall revenues coming in. So I only had to explain it once. So property tax years commencing on or after January 1st, 2025. So this year, property taxes for this year payable in 2026, this new rule will impact. So if you're familiar with the road impact fee program, it was designed to have a flat mill levy over the course of the years that the taxes are going in there. So PIDs 2 and 4 are 10 mill levy PIDs, PIDs 3 and 5 are 5 mill levy PIDs. That might change because they're not exempt from this new limit. In order to be exempt from this new limit, we would have to go back to the voters of those PIDs and ask to be exempt from this. While the intention to when those were created was to have the same mill levy in the perpetuity for that time, and there was language to be exempt from Tabor, from the 5.5, and any other revenue limits, that language is not acceptable with the new bill that specifically has specific language to exempt it. So we've done a lot of work, research, county attorney's office has looked into it, and we are not exempt from that limit with these, as well as our other 2 public improvement districts that were created at the request of those citizens for specific reasons. And so we will be following this 5.25% limit with the 4 El Paso County public improvement districts in place. For this year, there is actually not a required reduction. We're still within our 5.25% limit. What happens is if we have a reduction because of the limit, you're able to carry forward that space, that cap availability into the next year to ensure that if, say, like this year, we had 6% growth and we couldn't capture it, but next year we only have 1% growth, you can carry some of that forward and capture some of it next year, but everything is defined on that 2-year biannual assessment period. Does that all make sense? It's clear as mud for us too, but we have great staff who figured out how it works, and we're able to calculate that limit on an ongoing basis. So for PID number 1, which is your kind of your collector PID, it collects the fees up front if any developments choose to pay straight fees versus enter into taxing entities. And then we transfer funds that are collected through property taxes from the taxing PIDs in here. So for 2026, we're estimating from PIDs 2 and 3, we'll receive $2.5 million in transfers. We also, this year, received a fuels impact grant that went into the public improvement district, and you'll see later that we're anticipating spending that in 2026. And then we anticipate about $1.5 million in direct impact fees being paid and $275,000 in interest for total revenues of $4.3 million. And then we budget for possible credits to be developed of $1.75 million, capital projects of an additional $4 million on top of what we're doing for this year. And then that fuels impact grant of $2.6 million. So overall expenditures of $8.35 million is our preliminary proposed budget. We will present this to the Road Impact Fee Committee, I believe in 2 weeks, and they advise the board on the use of these funds. So that is my entire presentation for PID number 1. Questions?
Questions from commissioners? Great, I see none. So at this point, if you've concluded, then I will call for public comment. So if there's anyone here who'd like to speak on this item. And I see no one in the room, and we have no one online. So with that, we have come to the end of this PID 1 meeting, and this meeting is adjourned. Good morning. Welcome to the Public Improvement District number 2 meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 7th, and we will begin with item 1.
Item number 1 is department and committee reports, non-action items. 1A, 2026 preliminary balanced budget for the El Paso County Public Improvement District number 2. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. El Paso County Public Improvement District Number 2 is a 10 mill levy PID where we have stopped including new properties, but this PID will continue to tax for the next 8 years. And so the overall property taxes sorry, I said 8, it's 12 years. And so the property tax is certified from the assessor. We estimate taxes to be $2.2 million for next year. Specific ownership taxes related to that of $178,000 and estimated interest for a total revenue for the PID of $2.446 million. All of that funding we plan to transfer to PID number 1 to accomplish the projects budgeted there, as well as the associated tax collection expense of $35,000 for overall expenditures of $2.385 million for PID number 2. My entire presentation for PID 2.
Okay, I will ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak on the item presented. And seeing none in the room and none online, we have come to the end of this agenda. This meeting is adjourned. Good morning and welcome to the Public Improvement District Number 3 meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 7th. We will begin with item 1.
Item number 1 is Department and Committee Reports, Non-Action Items. 1A, 2026 Preliminary Balanced Budget for the El Paso County Public Improvement District Number 3. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. El Paso County Public Improvement District Number 3 is a 5 mill levy PID. And so for 2026, we don't need to have a temporary reduction for the new mill levy law. For property taxes, we anticipate revenues of $181,000, associated specific ownership tax of $14,000, and total interest of $3,000 for total revenue of $199,000. We will transfer primarily all of the funds to PID number 1 with an associated tax collection expense of $2,900 for overall expenditures of $178,000. And that is my whole presentation for PID number 3.
Okay, is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item? See none in the room and none online. And seeing no questions from commissioners, we have completed this agenda. This meeting is adjourned.
I've done this.
Good morning and welcome to the Public Improvement Number 4 meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 7th. We will begin with item 1.
Item number 1 is Department and Committee Reports, Non-Action Items. 1A, 2026 Preliminary Balanced Budget for El Paso County Public Improvement District Number 4. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. PID number 4 is your newly established 10 mill levy PID, which is the PID that we will start putting properties in. So right now, just the initiating property is in it, but then we'll start putting properties in. So it will replace PID number 2 for the new properties so that we can sunset PID number 2 when it was expected to be sunsetted. So for next year, our estimated property tax revenues are $5 from that one property, and the associated payment actually it's supposed to be in the tax collection line of $1. So to round that out, because it's the 1.5%, so we have to have an expenditure budget. It's tax collection expense, and so we anticipate ending with $4 in that fund.
Commissioner Nelson has a question.
Okay, I hate to break our groove, but can you just speak a little bit too for the process of joining a PID?
Yes. So
High level, you can make it high level.
Yes, and I know enough to be dangerous, but our public improvement district process, where we require new developments to enter into one of 3 PIDs that are available to them at the time to be able to accomplish the infrastructure necessary to create the development. So it has a lot to do with the intersections necessary for creating new development and making development pay its own way. Where a development, so say development A goes in and doesn't trigger the need for an intersection, then development B goes in and maybe still doesn't trigger the need for an intersection, but then development C comes in and triggers the need for that intersection. The intersection shouldn't be all on the one developer to build, because we won't allow it to happen until that intersection is done. And so what we do is you can pay impact fees up front and not enter into a taxing district, which is what PID number 1 is for, or you can choose to have it primarily be based on taxes and go into the 10 mil levy PID, or you can there's a PID number 3 or now 5 is like the hybrid one where it's kind of half and half. You pay some impact fees into PID 1 and then pay a 5 mil levy PID on the property. It's intended for those properties to be taxed no more than 20 years. So it's not a tax in perpetuity to pay for one-time initial improvements to an intersection. But what it does is, so it's anywhere between, I think it's 12 and 20 years. So the last property to go in might only pay for 12, the first properties in pay for 20, and essentially you're creating new PIDs every 8 years to ensure that a property from 40 years ago isn't still paying for today's improvements. And what happens is a developer can either choose to build that improvement to get the process going quicker and then collect the impact fees to build that development. So all of the properties have paid into the impact fee program, and the developer who built the intersection can use the credits that they've created to pay for that. Or sometimes the county comes in and does the work and we get reimbursed from the impact fee program to build that intersection. And so it works both ways. The commission will see every once in a while credits, creation of credits come to you, and what those credits are where a developer has built that intersection. So possibly, say my previous example, developer C came in and did a $1.5 million intersection and put traffic lights in or a roundabout or whatever was the county engineer deemed necessary. But only a portion of that should have been their expense, so then they can collect those other fees back from the fact that the money has been coming into the public improvement districts. So the reason PIDs 4 and 5 were created this year is to sunset PIDs 2 and 3. So we're no longer putting new developments into PIDs 2 and 3. They're going to go into PIDs 4 and 5. And the development itself picks which of those PIDs that they're going to go into and request it to us.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Great refresher for me, and also then I think helpful for the community here. Why there's only $5 in this one. That it's intentional to not continue to tax new development, but do want to just emphasize that there is a mechanism for new development to pay for itself, and that it's not on current residents paying for that infrastructure build out. And I think that's really important for people to hear and be reminded. And so that was excellent. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone here today who'd like to speak on this item? I see no one in the room and no one online. We've come to the end of this agenda. This meeting is adjourned. Good morning and welcome to the Public Improvement District number 5. Today is Tuesday, October 7th, and we will begin with item 1.
Item number 1 is Department and Committee Reports Non-Action Items. 1A, 2026 Preliminary Balanced Budget for El Paso County Public Improvement District number 5. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. PID number 5 is the newest 5 mil levy PID to replace PID number 3 for new inclusions. Right now, we just have the one property that is in PID number 5, and so and it's undeveloped property. So the estimated revenue for next year is $3. So then we do have the associated tax collection expense. And so rounded, we have a $1 budget for the year with a remaining fund balance of $2. And so during 2026, we'll add properties into this, and then for the following years when it would truly see some revenue start coming in.
Okay, seeing no questions, I'll ask, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none in the room and none online, we've come to the end of this agenda. This meeting is adjourned. Good morning. Welcome to the Pioneer Village Roads Public Improvement District meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 7th. We'll begin with item 1.
Item number 1 is department and committee reports, non-action items. 1A, 2026 preliminary balanced budget for the El Paso County Pioneer Village Roads Public Improvement District. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. Pioneer Valley Roads Public Improvement District is a public improvement district that we were asked to set up by the citizens of that area to help them maintain their private roads. And so they requested a 21 mil PID be placed on their properties to be able to help pay for annual road maintenance. This PID, again, is subject to that new 5.25% property tax limit law. And this PID, because of the growth in value of the properties throughout the year and the assessment rates, will need to have a temporary reduction in their mill levy of approximately 1.429 mils. So a net mill levy about 19.571 mils would be placed on their property. And this is all subject to the final assessment that we'll receive in November. So we would receive about $62,000 in property taxes for next year, associated specific ownership tax of about $5,000, and then a little bit of interest for total revenues of $68,000. We are anticipating that we would put that entire $68,000 into the contractual obligation we use with the paving and road maintenance company, and then the associated tax collection expense of $1,070 for overall expenditures of $69,070 for the year.
Any questions? Commissioner Nelson.
What is the process for a community to create a PID for themselves? Because I have had conversations with homeowners where they are on a private road, and so can you speak a little bit to that?
I would defer that to our county attorney, who he has an attorney that's an expert in it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner. There's a petition process. I don't have a lot of detail on that to provide right now, but I could get you a detailed answer within the week if that.
That's all right. I think I want to make sure that people are aware that if they're not happy with their current situation of being on a private road and need some help getting that taken care of, that there is a mechanism to do so. And I think that's good for people to know. There's an option.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I will ask if there's anyone here who'd like to speak on this item. Seeing no one in the room and no one online, we've come to the end of this agenda. This meeting's adjourned. Good morning and welcome to the Stratmore Valley Streetlights Public Improvement District meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 7th. Item 1.
Item number 1 is department and committee reports, non-action items. 1A, 2026 preliminary balanced budget for the El Paso County Stratmore Valley Streetlights Public Improvement District. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Commissioners, good morning. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. This Stratmore Valley Streetlight Public Improvement District was, again, a PID requested by the residents of this area to install and then pay the ongoing maintenance and electricity bills for the streetlights in the area. And it got started with a 3.3 mil PID, and that was sufficient for the initial installation as well as ongoing utilities. We, however, in the last couple of years have been issuing a 0.825 mill levy PID, so a quarter of the allowable mill levy to pay the ongoing utility bills. And then obviously last year, the new mill levy law came into effect. So essentially we can't ever raise that more than that 5.25% per year. And so the property taxes for next year are estimated to be $12,767, specific ownership tax of $1,000, and interest of $7,500. And we anticipate utility bills of approximately $15,000. And this is through Colorado Springs Utilities. They provide the electric to those streetlights. We're monitoring the changes in electric rates closely on behalf of this PID, but we have sufficient funding and fund balance to do that. You'll see down here the reduction that we chose to do ongoing of 2.475 mils to get it more in line with their ongoing expenditures, as well as then an additional reduction due to the 5.25% mill levy law. So we're anticipating issuing a mill levy of 0.808 mils for 2026.
I'm just going to comment, that's an incredibly large increase to almost double. And I'm assuming that that is because of the new tiered rates and the time that streetlights would be coming on.
Well, and honestly, this is just a guess. We budgeted $15,000 in the past and haven't spent it, so we're continuing with that budget. But we are, a lot of those rates with the tiered rates starting from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. We talked about, should we lower this even further? And at this point, this is not the year we want to lower it too much further, because if those electric bills do come in and we don't have the funding to pay it ongoing, we can't, because of that new 5.25% mill levy law, recapture some of the reduction that we had. So we're going to keep it here this year, and then if in the future we can reduce it further, that would be our intention, to continue to pay the ongoing operating. But with these rates, we're just uncertain of what that will do, because especially during the winter, the lights are on at 5 p.m., which is when those new time of day rates come into effect.
And is there any, just looking at the fund balance, are there any upcoming like maintenance or kind of what is planned for in the future with a significant fund balance? Are there anticipated uses for that?
Yeah, so it would be able to help us replace lights. And we, going into this is not something the county is an expert in utility, light poles. And so we anticipated some of them needing to be maintained, replaced, fixed with car accidents, things like that. And we haven't seen those expenditures, but when they do come, they're actually pretty pricey. And so we have that money available to appropriate if anything like that happens.
Great. Any additional questions? Seeing none. Oh, Commissioner Nelson.
So just thinking about that, these PIDs or PIDs eventually sunset.
This one does not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the Pioneer Valley roads as well as the Stratmore Valley PID do not sunset.
Okay.
The road impact fee ones that we've set up for El Paso County purposes do sunset. These ones that were citizen initiated for ongoing things do not sunset.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak on this item? Seeing none in the room and none online, we've come to the end of this agenda. This meeting is adjourned.